Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? You find me at a bit of a loss this morning. Um, don't know why. Finished the show yesterday. Everything was hunky dory. Turned on the show this morning. Obviously, clearly the camera's working, the microphone's working, but my second screen, my second monitor over here, which is where I normally run the show from, just refused to turn on. Nothing happening there at all, which is somewhat annoying. It means that I'm trying to do 15 different things on one tiny screen. I mean, it's not that tiny, but yeah, it's making life difficult. But good morning, everyone. How are we this morning? Hope you're all fit and well. Who do we have here? Who do we have in our midst? Gary Muirhead, first off the line. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Yeah, doesn't Friday feel like it's been a long time coming this week, eh? Yeah, absolutely. Mark Whiting is in the house. Dan Cullen is here as well. It says morning and happy Friday. Jim Turner has just pitched up. Morning, Jim. Morning, Dan. Morning, Mark. Wish I could be bringing you some good news, but as you're about to hear in the news section, not great. Not great at all. Is that the screen that Ruth got you for Christmas? It is. Bizarrely, it's got a blue LED on it, and the blue LED is flashing, so it's clearly got power. There's a lead that links it from it to my main computer, which is the one I'm looking at right now. That's still there. It's all plugged in. Everything seems to be okay. Nothing whatsoever has changed. The only thing that I can think has changed, and because I'm doing the show this morning, not had a chance to check. Then I guess there may have been an iOS update overnight, which means that I need to refresh the whatever the hell that you refresh in these instances. There's Dan saying good morning, Jim, Chris, Mark, Andy and Gary. I think that's pretty much everyone, but good morning to you each and every one. So yes, if you find I look slightly, I mean, normally I'm kind of talking like that, and now I'm talking like this. The comments are very, very small, which is a bit of a struggle for my poor old eyesight. But listen, we will soldier on. First world problems, as they say. Given the state of the world, one ailing screen is not really going to be that much of a big deal, is it? So what say we crack on? I think we probably should. Loads to get through, including, as I say, some depressing news to begin. Back after this. The other issue I'm having, which I've only just realised, is I normally have the show on that screen and Instagram and their comments on this screen. I mean, it's here, but I'm looking at a completely different screen now. So, good morning, everyone. Enough of my pissing and moaning. It is Friday, the 7th of November. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. In today's show, we're going to go out on site with Hitachi, which is always a good thing to do. XCMG has added to its electric lineup. We had an excavator yesterday. I think it's the wheel loader today. We're introducing Case ProCare, telematics, after sales support, all of that kind of stuff. And we don't normally do agricultural equipment, but I think in this instance you'll allow us to make a bit of a detour because we're taking the Fastrac. Those of you that know, we're taking the Fastrac to agricultural efficiency with JCB. Plus, in today's edition of Mark's Morning Monologue, did we do enough? Did we do enough? I'm not going to explain that any further, but that's what we've got coming up for you later in the show. Who has just arrived? Ken Hatcher. Ken Hatcher has just wiped his feet on the doormat and he's entered. Good morning, Ken. How are you doing, my friend? Good to see you here. Looks like he's got cloud but no rain, which is not bad at all. And there's Gary Muirhead returning the favour to Dan Cullen. So yes, we've got we have news. We have news, and it's not great news. I'll tell you all about it in just a moment. Yeah, this comes from Construction Index this morning. I think Construction Inquirer are probably running it as well. Just very quickly, if you go over to Construction Index, I think they must have written this in a hurry because most of it doesn't make any bleeding sense whatsoever. But the crux of it is construction activity has declined at the fastest rate for more than 5 years. Yeah. The latest monthly survey of construction industry purchasing managers indicates yet another month of decline, the 10th in a row and the steepest fall since May 2020. Yeah, you may recall May 2020, we were in the midst of a pandemic. The headline S&P Global UK Construction Purchasing Managers Index, or PMI, which is way better, easier way to say it. Apparently is down from 46.2. Registered 44.1 in October, down from 46.2 in September. This is. I'm just trying to make some sense of this because, as I say, they look like they've written this in a real hurry. This monthly survey indicates UK construction has now been in its longest period of decline. Get this, since the global financial crisis more than 15 years ago. You might remember 2008, 2009, the arse literally fell out of the industry. Well, we're back to those levels. That's the longest continual downturn we've seen since those, I was going to say heady days, are hardly heady days. They were arsey days. So yes, not looking good out there at all, I'm afraid, people. And we are entering, obviously, the old seasonal silly season. We're entering Christmas party period. Any projects that are coming up unlikely to go ahead right now. A lot of people will be sitting on their hands until January. So it looks bad today. Probably look worse next month, and it'll look worse the month after that. All we can hope and pray is that when January rolls around and we've got an autumn budget out of the way and everyone knows exactly where they stand, that there might be a bit of a bounce back. But I wouldn't hold your breath. There you are. There's the news for today. Wish I could have brought you something a little more cheery. But while you're pondering that, let's do. Following our not particularly good news just a moment ago, I'm going to say this from Gary Muirhead: no shit, Sherlock. No, I mean, obviously, I think we're all feeling it, and we're all aware of exactly what's going on out there. Andy Thornton's just arrived. Ken Hatchett, I want to pick up on this because regardless of your political leanings, he said, I think it's to do with the Labour Party. Companies have got no confidence anymore. Isn't it weird? I remember having these conversations with Neil Edwards late of this parish when we used to talk about the monthly figures and the annual figures for construction. You've got these highly professional construction companies doing their thing, house builders, civil engineering companies. In addition to that, you've got highly paid and highly respected, generally, economists who have got their finger on the pulse of the global economy and the local economy and everything else. You've got bankers and you've got politicians. And sometimes all it requires is for somebody to say, yeah, not feeling it today. And the whole market goes tits up. Confidence. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? How does that translate? If you've got a full order book as a construction company or a demolition company, you'd have thought you were feeling pretty damn confident. And yet somebody somewhere else says, yeah, not feeling it this week. Bit of a downturn. Based on fucking what? But yes, we are. The one thing we're really, really good at as an industry and as a nation, I think, is talking ourselves into a recession. Sometimes it literally just needs somebody to say the word recession and we'll go, that's it, we're in one. That's it, it's all over. the industry costs and we all catch a cold. Ain't that the truth? My phone is red hot with people calling, asking me for work. Not surprised. It makes sense as the pull. Hang on a minute. As the pull out there now looking for work in London North has skyrocketed. Wouldn't be at all surprised. Wouldn't be at all surprised. And if it's down to confidence, like I said, you can, if you're a construction company, you know the cost of steel and concrete and bricks and glass and timber. You know the cost of labor, you know the cost of your fuel, you know the cost of your insurance and so on down the line. And then when it comes down to the actual wider economy, it's a bit of a feeling. Bit of how does that work if the head economist has a bit of a Barney with the missus the night before, walks into the office? "Well, what are we thinking today then, Steve?" "Yeah, not so sure." "Oh, that's it. Game over. The industry's going down the toilet." What? What? Anyway, enough of that. I'm sure I'm oversimplifying. Let's go and hang out with some Hitachi, shall we?
Alaska is a unique place, and I was fortunate enough that my folks moved here when I was very, very young. When I started my company, I basically saw kind of a lack of quality control in the industry, and I wanted to provide a higher-end service to local builders and custom home builders. Hitachi helped my company grow because it's just a proven performer. We started off doing residential construction for more baseline homes, and then when BTH had a name established for itself, then the custom home builders came calling. The first 160 I bought was a 1999 EX 160-5, and it was the workhorse that built BTH Construction.
I've worked on a lot of projects up here. I mean, big projects, easily 100 home builds. That's the one thing I really like about the Hitachis is they're just so darn comfortable. You got all the different adjustments for your seats. Sitting in them for 8 to 10 hours really doesn't bother me. On this site, we are prepping for another home build. So we're going to be doing a water line, sewer, driveways coming up both sides. This is getting a double driveway and then a big foundation pad. We will be taking all of the organics off of the top layer of this pad in our driveways and getting it ready to haul in gravel.
With the weather in Alaska, we can work year-round, but it's very difficult in the wintertime. We have maybe 1 or 2 days a year that we have to stop because of rain, but we have far more days in the winter that we can't work because it's either too cold or it's snowing, and that makes it difficult for trucks and transport of equipment. What first caught my attention about Hitachi is how many people actually use Hitachi. It has a wide marketplace, and when you look at the other contractors that have proven reputations in town, the machine of choice is usually Hitachi. How would I describe Hitachi in one word? Reliable. My favorite feature about the Hitachi machines is just power and finesse. It is the right combination of the two. I see Hitachi helping us grow in the next 5 to 10 years the same way that they've done for the last 25 years. Rock solid performance and minimizing our downtime.
I'll go back to Gary on the whole discussion about the economy in just a moment. But I'm going to do this. Dan immediately said, "Be Landcross soon." Gary said, "It's not Hitachi, it's Landcross, but maybe they'll keep the Hitachi name in the USA. Not until April, and April next year. No, April 2027, I think it was, wasn't it? And I think it's a universal thing. I don't think it's going to be country specific. I think it's going to be everywhere. So I think America and Canada will be getting that." Dan saying, "Finesse, he must be joking. There is very bad finesse with the Hitachi, and he's not a fan. Fiat Hitachi was the best they ever made. The Dash 6, Dash 7, not a great machine. Underpowered and unstable." Going back to Gary on the economy, maybe it's a British thing. I don't think it is. I think it is a global thing. We can quite easily talk ourselves into a global recession. And I wonder what they base their information on. When we have a general election, you have these poll companies going out and doing surveys before the election takes place to try and get a handle on exactly how the British populace is likely to place their votes. Now, obviously, they can't speak to all 80 odd million people in the UK, but sometimes the sample is as few as 1,000 or a couple of thousand people. A couple of thousand people representative of 80 million. Now, I realise not all 80 million are of voting age, but let's say even if you took 100,000 as representative of the nation, are they? What's their economic background? Whereabouts in the country are they? Are they left-leaning? Are they right-leaning? Are they in Wales? Are they in Scotland? All of those things. And I wonder about that with the economy. I realise economists are very well connected, but have they really got a handle on everything that's going on? I mean, obviously with the advent of AI, maybe they have got some fancy algorithm that just collects data on all the industries in all the countries in all the world, feeds it in and says, yeah, things are looking pretty shitty, fellas, time to start downgrading. Maybe they do, but I don't, as I say, when it comes to elections, I don't get that impression. It's more a case of, I think the wind's blowing left this time around. Bizarre. No, Dan. The worst thing Hitachi ever done was joining with Fiat. They were absolutely terrible machines, and Hitachi on their own are brilliant. Isn't it weird? Isn't it weird how people have different perceptions of stuff? Dan says, "Well, it is a global. I think it starts in Wall Street, and then I'm guessing that spreads across the board. As you see, a lot of things start in America, then filters down. Investors hold their wallets closer to their chest. Yes, things do have a nasty habit of starting in America. Listen, I'm not going to go down that road again because obviously it is it's a personal thing and it's a divisive thing. But I do think the current direction of travel for UK politics is very much borrowed from the American playbook. I think Nigel Farage is basically a Donald Trump mini-me. The difference is Donald Trump kind of started from scratch as a political force, whereas Nigel Farage actually has a playbook to build on. I'm not sure that's a good thing or not. Jim Turner says, excuse me, Hitachi is still accurate and able of finesse, but the Dash 7 seems to have lost some of the grunt the Dash 5's had. Just as comfy, and the cabs are great. Yeah, listen, it's down to perception, I think. And again, I mean, we're talking about the economy, we're talking about political things as well. I think it's the same with machines. Sometimes it's the same with a car. Sometimes you get in a car and you think, "Whoa, yeah, this is," and you speak to somebody else and say, "Oh no, that's a piece of crap. That is." I wonder if it's a bit of that. The best way out of recession is to work and to buy our way out of it. That or print lots and lots of money, which is the crazy thing with it is that all of this, when push comes to shove, all of this is arbitrary. And I realize he's kind of faded from the public view, but I remember watching an episode of the Russell Brand podcast long before he decided he was the Messiah. But I was watching this podcast, and he was talking about nations and how they are basically an imaginary thing. And Russell Brand being a stand-up comedian, the example he gave was, back in the days of dinosaurs didn't identify themselves specifically as a Belgian Tyrannosaurus Rex. They were a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It was humans that basically said, okay, well, this is Belgium, but if you go over there, that's the Netherlands. That's a different thing entirely. And if you go over there, well, that's France. That's a completely different thing. Different rules, potentially different language, completely different thing. All of it is arbitrary. It's the same as the money system or the financial system. Financial system is arbitrary. It's kind of made up, and the economy to a large degree is made up. When you're making global decisions based on perception, what does that mean? What does that even mean? Andy Thornton chimes in with all predictions are based on historical patterns, a cross between driving, looking in the rearview mirror, and a judgment which listened to by others based on their success in the market. It is, and bearing in mind, and I think we're all guilty of this. I certainly am in the job that I do, but it is tempting to sort of look back. Oh yes, back in the day, that thing wouldn't have happened, or when that happened, what we did was this. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about tariffs in the US, and Ronald Reagan had a bit of a love-hate relationship with tariffs. But depending which side of the political spectrum you sit in America, Donald Trump says Ronald Reagan was a huge fan of tariffs, and therefore tariffs must be great. And there was other people saying, well, he wasn't that big a fan, and actually tariffs are a terrible thing. All of which is fine, and yes, you can learn from history. But bearing in mind, Ronald Reagan was around in the 80s, pre-internet, pre-AI, pre-COVID, pre-everything else. How truly valid are, and bearing in mind, we're talking about a period now that is 45 years ago. It's look at the situation we have with anything, and if you go back far enough in history, you can find an example of it having happened before. But was it the same? Is it the same? I mean, but at the height of COVID, oh yes, we remember some of us will remember the Black Death. Very few of us. Some of us will remember the Black Death and how we reacted to that. What does that even mean? The Black Death happened whenever it was, the 1400s, 1500s, I can't remember, but it happened at a completely different time, different set of circumstances. The way that houses were built helped to spread it. The fact that we weren't dealing with the rodent population, that helped to spread it. We didn't have a national health service. We didn't have vaccinations. It's a meaningless thing, utterly meaningless. Jim says it's the money printing that put us in the shit in the first place. Absolutely. If they stop sending billions to Brazil, or the likes of Brazil and India, and cut in half, it might work and stop. Unnecessary spending on stupid things. The crazy thing with this, I always say this whenever I talk about politics, is that politics is basically day-to-day life, but bigger, much, much bigger. This notion of sending money abroad is, in some ways, I'm oversimplifying here, but in some ways, it's like when I was a kid, when I was about 14 or 15, I had a paper round, which paid me whatever it was, 10, 15 quid a week or whatever it might be. And, guaranteed I'd get my money, I'd go straight down the record store, buy some records, and then I'd be broke for the rest of the week. So we had this kind of in-joke between me and my mum that I would give her a £5 note, and a couple of days later, I'd ask to borrow it back. I'd get paid, and I'd give it back to her, and then a couple of days later, so it was just going back and forth. There is a thing going on at the moment with America sending whatever it is, 20 billion to Argentina. And the whole notion is that we're going to send you 20 billion, partly to prop up your questionable regime, but also with the notion that you will buy more American products. So we're going to give you 20 billion so that you give us 20 billion back. And then maybe at some point down the line, we'll give it back to you. And then you can give it. It's the same 20 billion. It's not gone anywhere. It's not changed. It's not done anything at all. It's just the same 20 billion. And when you think about, if you were to draw a line in the sand today, and let's I'm going to pluck a figure completely out of the air here. Imagine, draw a line in the sand, how much money exists in the world. Let's say it's $100 trillion. And all it does is move around. Yes, you might print more money, but the value of that money does not change. You've not invented value. Unless that value is tied to something, property, gold, diamonds, copper, whatever it might be, unless you've tied it to something, it's an imaginary figure. So there's 100 trillion, and it's spread across 180 different countries around the world. And all we're doing, basically, is moving it around. America sends it to Argentina. Argentina sends it to Brazil. Brazil sends it to Australia. Australia sends it to New Zealand. New Zealand sends it to the UK. The UK sends it back to America. 'Tis bollocks, I tell you. Brazil is actually a rich company, as is Africa. Comparison to UK, and they spend millions in wasted things. I'm not sure about. Obviously Africa isn't a country. I think if you could overcome some of the corruption in Africa, that would go a long way. Instead of sending money abroad, we could send British people abroad to work on worldwide projects, invest in worldwide businesses that are run by British people. The problem is, we have allowed that to. Think about this. We as a nation were the technological leaders. Car manufacturing, shipbuilding, steel making, all of these things where we were once leaders. And now we want to build a power station. Well, we can't afford to build it ourselves, so we outsource it to the Chinese. We want to build a railway. Who's good at railways? Well, the French are quite good at railways. Who are these people, and where are we sending them? What would France want any of our engineers? Probably not. Would China? Definitely not. That way we'd have more employment, more taxpayers, and less claimants. The only problem, of course, is if you send people abroad, are they necessarily sending the money back home? Even going back to what I just said, the fact that money doesn't actually go anywhere. It's all it's an ephemeral, not real thing. But I take your point, Jim. Should we go back to equipment? I think we probably should. Back after
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
So if you were here yesterday, I'm sure you will recall, I'm sure you note all this stuff down. You will recall that I brought you details of a new XCMG electric hybrid excavator. Well, XCMG aren't quite done because they've also got a wheel loader built in the same vein. And this is what it looks like.
A newly developed 5-ton hybrid wheel loader from XCMG, equipped with self-developed range extender and dual motor drive, achieving 35% to 50% fuel savings, widely suitable for port stock yards, aggregates plants, and railway freight yards. Equipped with 90 kilowatt range extender, low fuel consumption, easy maintenance, no range anxiety, industry unique triple motor platform, with 200 kilowatt travel motor and 80 kilowatt hydraulic motor, strong power, high efficiency, integrated large motor drive with stepless speed regulation, high torque, high transmission efficiency and quick response, optimal XCMG dry type or white type drive axle, strong load capacity, fully hydraulic braking, high reliability, integrated electric drive cooling, intelligent control, high cooling efficiency, dual pump converging fixed displacement system, precise and smooth, independent motor control, on-demand supply, energy efficient, flow amplification steering, flexible and reliable, good steering performance. 49.55 kilowatt-hours LFP battery, peak power up to 272 kilowatt, supports fast charging and intelligent thermal management, LCD screen centralized machine parameters, fully sealed connectors, dustproof and waterproof to IP67 easy maintenance, micropressurized design, spacious, quiet, wide visibility, suspension seat and multi-direction adjustable steering column for high comfort, follow-up control box, fully equipped with AC, radio storage compartments, cup holders, mobile phone charging ports, etc. Pilot joystick integrated with FNR shifting, easy to operate, heavy-duty frame with high-strength structure, FEA optimized, suitable for tough applications, enlarged circulation pin, spacing reduces stress, improves stability and service life, Z-bar reverse 6-linkage structure, reducing damping impact, dual dustproof design, more reliable lubrication, high-strength pins for higher durability, fully hydraulic braking, responsive and reliable. Closed hydraulic circuits, longer service life of brake components. Energy recovery reduces wear and improves efficiency. Rear hood tilts up to 65 degrees. One-touch access to core components. Large inspection space, easy maintenance. Compatible with quick change bucket, fork, grapple, spreader, sling, and other attachments, suitable for multiple operation scenarios.
They've spent 10 million developing that, and then they spent 35 quid on the AI to talk about it. It must be hard. It must be hard. Is anybody in the XCMG marketing department sufficiently fluent in English to listen to that and go, that sounds terrible? They're saying English words, but in a really not English way. Reliable. Yeah, bizarre. Gary rightly says, is that a Temu AI? It may be, but all I would say is if they wanted Temu AI, they'd have to wait for about 6 weeks for it to arrive. Let's have a look. What do we got? XCMG, the AI sounds like a comedian. It did. It sounded like an English person doing a really derogatory impression of a Chinese person. Bizarre. Andy Thornton says the printing of money is the premise of inflation. Money is like a river, only useful when it's moving. That's why it's called currency. You can see why they pay Andy the big bucks, right? Currency, well done. They don't need to send it home. They'd be paying UK tax. Listen, if I was offered a job as a, in the unlikely event I was offered a job in Brazil, the last thing I'd be doing would be sending my money back home again. I'd be living the high life on Copacabana Beach, surrounded by those dental floss thongs. I wouldn't be giving the UK a moment consideration at all. Jim Turner says, I don't know the figures, but with the money that's been sent to drought-ridden countries, we could have at least huge areas reformed and educated their agricultural industry. Has anybody ever seen it's an American comedian, sadly no longer with us, a guy called Sam Kinison, talking about how to solve starvation in African nations. And the woke among us probably wouldn't appreciate it, but I tell you what, I'm not going to tell you about it. What I'll do, if I can find it and I can bring it to you, I'll play it for you because it is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Make ourselves money while also helping them as well. Thank you, Andy. Always wondered that. What have you wondered? Oh yes, currency. Yes. Okay, let's crack on, shall we? What have we got next? Oh, we've got a bit of this. Then we're going to be talking Case ProCare.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Right, while you're all learning about Case ProCare, I'm going to slide off just for a few seconds and see if I can find Sam Kinison talking about curing world hunger. I'll be back after this.
ProCare as a standard offering on heavy equipment from Case Construction really differentiates Case and customers who buy Case equipment because it gives them product assurance over a 3-year planned maintenance contract, 3-year 3,000-hour factory warranty, as well as a 7-year advance My Case Construction subscription, giving them knowledge about what's happening on that machine, and again, assurance that that machine will keep running for that duration of time.
By having the ProCare, they do all the oil changes, filters, and it's all included with the purchase price.
My service guys can see every hour on each machine what's going on. They know what these machines are burning, how many they put on a job, what to expect, especially when they plan out it's a 30-week project. It helps them put all their numbers together. We've got good data to show them right now, and I think it puts us ahead of everyone else.
Customers for Case heavy equipment automatically get ProCare on their wheel loaders, excavators, dozers, and motor graders. And that's going to give them the product assurance that they don't have to negotiate for extra coverage.
They bring all the filters, all the oils, all the necessary stuff. They take care of everything. I know it's getting taken care of by professionals, and then it's one less thing that I have to worry about or concern myself with trying to do as well.
They'll actually contact you usually when it's getting close on your hours. They'll call you and say you're getting close on your hours, and they take care of it. And actually, I wouldn't have one without ProCare ever again. And the other competitors, you can buy a ProCare, but they charge you a lot for it. So ProCare has been really good, and we really like the ProCare program.
The value of ProCare really comes into the customer in having that relationship with the dealership. And what the dealer can add to that partnership is they're able to provide their product knowledge and application knowledge for that piece of equipment for the customer, helping them better understand how to utilize it, or in this case with ProCare Planned Maintenance, how to maintain that machine better, getting the most productivity and efficiency out of that machine, helping the bottom line for that customer.
Right, we are going to have a comedy interlude right now. Let me change my screen layout because I've found Sam Kinison talking about world hunger and how he would solve it. Here we go.
And you're trying to help. Well, like I said, I'm just trying to help. I'm trying to just do whatever I can for people. Like the world hunger thing, the USA for Africa. Isn't that great? You guys hear the song? Nice song, isn't it? Beautiful. I'm like anybody else on the planet. I'm very moved by world hunger. I see the same commercials. Those little kids starving and very depressed. And I watch these things on TV and I see those commercials and I look at it and I go, God, how cruel, you know? To see a little kid out there and I go, fuck, you know, I know the film crew could give this kid a sandwich. You know the kid's not out there, filming a letter from home with a Betamax, huh? You know there's a director 5 feet away going, don't feed him yet! Get that sandwich out of here! It doesn't work unless he looks hungry! But I'm not trying to make fun of world hunger. Matter of fact, I think I have the answer, because I spend a lot of time working it out. And if you want to stop world hunger, stop sending them food. Don't send these people another bite, folks. You want to send them something? You want to help? Send them U-Hauls. Send them U-Hauls, some luggage. Send them a guy out there that goes, hey, you know, we've been driving out here every day with your food for like the last, 30, 40 years. And we were driving out here today across the desert, and it occurred to us there wouldn't be world hunger if you people would live where the food is! You live in a desert! Understand that? You live in a fucking desert! Nothing grows out here! Nothing's gonna grow out here! You see this? Huh? See this? This is sand. Yeah. It's sand. You know it's going to be 100 years from now, huh? It's going to be sand! You live in a fucking desert! Get your kids, get your shit. We'll make one trip. We'll take you to where the food is. We have deserts in America. We just don't live in them, asshole!
Sam Kinison, who almost certainly died of a heart attack. Let's have a look. Dan says, you've got to love the American description of companies and kit. I absolutely agree. This will sound very harsh, but there's no point in saving loads of people just for those save people to start reproducing a decade later. It keeps making the problem bigger. Yeah. Where did you park your empathy this morning, Jim? It's one thing they're good at, and the cure is less obtainable. And the cure less obtainable. Okay, what a guy, says Dan Cullen. Live where the food is. Yeah, live where the food is. Yeah, I would imagine that that little skit there is probably Bob Geldof's worst nightmare. Anyway, we've got more to get through. We've done our comedic interlude. Let's have our young lady, and then we're going to talk tractors.
Merry Christmas and happy holidays, everyone.
Merry Merry Christmas on the 7th of November. I can only apologise. Yes, we don't do agricultural equipment on this show, but for just this once, we're going to make an exception because the manufacturer of that agricultural equipment is JCB, and the machine is the Fastrac. I feel like I've been spoiled because I can honestly say, hand on heart, the Fastrac is actually the only tractor I've ever driven. Very good it is too. Dan says, love these Fastracs, not heard a bad thing about them. Chris Ford, good morning, Chris Ford. Who, obviously inspired by Sam Kinnis in just a moment, has arrived. Comedy brain engaged. Morning all. Found a woman buried up to her neck in sand. She said, can you dig me out? I said, what's in it for me? And she said, sand. The oldest are the best. Yes, they are. Jim Turner says, my brain works different to most people. I see a lot of things as a maths question. 100,000 starving kids, 300,000 starving kids 10 years later. No cure, just a bigger problem. I hate to say it, but I don't think you're actually far off. I know a huge farm in Scotland has a fleet of them, and they love them. Yeah, listen, everybody that I've ever spoken to about the Fastrac are big fans as well, particularly if you're one of those that's traveling between farms and you need to get from A to B a bit lively, because they do roll along. Seeing as you're featuring tractors, can you remind everyone it's the Newark Tractor Show this weekend? Loads of cats going. Yes, everyone. This is coming live from Jim Turner. It is the Newark Tractor Show this weekend, and there are it was 100 plus, I think, was it 100 plus caterpillars going? If you'd like to drop details of where it's taking place, Jim, please feel free to do that. Yes, do that. Yes, that's. While you're doing that, I'm going to round things out because that's about it for the main part of this morning show. It's also it for the week. That's it. All over. Friday. Done, dusted. Hang on a minute. What's this saying? Very true, Jim. Oh, bollocks. I'm working now. I'd have gone. Yeah, mate. Listen, I mean, Jim did warn us about this bloody months ago, and I've completely forgotten as well. So, Jim, if you would like to remind people that are available to go and have a look at that. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Have a good weekend. Hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time to stick around for just a few minutes more, I will be back immediately. Immediately after Jim's message, which says it's at the Newark Showground, Nottinghamshire, just off the A1. So if you are, if you can access the A1 from where you are, which I think would be pretty much everyone, pop along. And look out for a big fella with a beard. You'll thank me for it later. Morning monologue. My mum died in January 2022. In the weeks following her passing, myself, my sister, and my dad were inundated with sympathy cards and messages of condolence. As news of her death spread, there were text messages, Facebook messages, and phone calls. A week after my mum's funeral, I went to see my dad. He was still grief-stricken, of course, but that grief was made worse by a complete lack of contact from the friends and family that had been in contact before the funeral and that had even been in attendance to pay their last respects. It's like they've forgotten her already, he said, with tears in his eyes. They've all just moved on. I tried to tell him that people have busy lives, that they may be grieving privately, or that, like me, grief is just too painful and is something to avoid. He was right, though. Me and my sister both noticed it as well. The news of my mum's passing brought long-lost relatives and friends out of the woodwork, but they all vanished again when the initial fuss was over. Maybe they thought they'd done enough. 108 days from now, it will be the 10th anniversary of the Didcot disaster that claimed the lives of 4 demolition workers. 10 years, 3,544 days. In all that time, I've sat here and written about and talked about and broadcasted about that incident. But did I do enough? I did some initial fundraising to try to help the bereaved families, but most of that was within weeks of the incident. There's been virtually nothing since. I've probably done over 100 TV, radio, and newspaper interviews on the subject of Didcot over the course of the past decade. But that too was front-loaded. I did more than 20 the day after the incident itself, but I've done just 4 this year. I've done my best to keep this horrific incident in the spotlight, but could I have done more? I've written to 3 different Home Secretaries about the Didcot disaster and the prolonged, protracted investigation into it. In each instance, I received a bland and copy and paste response. But there's actually been 10 Home Secretaries since the boiler house came down. Should I have written to more? Should I have written to all of them? I've sat on the sidelines and widely criticised the Thames Valley Police's handling of the investigation. I've called out the inaction of the Health and Safety Executive too. Was that helpful? Probably not. Was there something more positive I might have done? Probably not, but I never really stopped to ask. Could I have done more over the past 10 years? Possibly, probably. Would it have helped? Probably not, but I'll never know. I know the men on site that fateful day did all they could, all they were allowed to do in an attempt to rescue their fallen comrades. I know some of them remain in touch with the families of the 4 men to this day. But what of the wider demolition industry? Has it done enough over the past 10 years? It's observed minutes of silence for the victims during that time, but could it have done more? Should it have done more? Did the industry do enough to support the families of the 4 men, not just financially, but also in terms of emotional support? Has the industry maintained contact with those families, reassured them that they and their loved ones aren't forgotten? Did the industry do enough to support the demolition company caught in the midst of the investigation? In the clamour to appoint blame, did we forget that these are human beings too, that they too will be grieving? Did the industry do enough to support the police investigation? Could it perhaps have seconded one or more industry experts to help police understand the intricacies of demolition and structural engineering? Could that additional insight and expertise have helped bring the investigation to a more timely close? Could the industry have used its connection with the Health and Safety Executive to produce some non-prejudicial interim findings and potentially make other boiler house demolitions that little bit safer? Could the industry have taken those interim findings and shared them with their demolition brothers and sisters around the world that are also working on power station demolition projects? Did the industry explore every opportunity to help bring this prolonged and protracted investigation to a conclusion? Or did it just accept that these things take time, that we need to allow investigations to run their course? We have thus far been prevented from learning any lessons from the incident itself. But has the industry learned anything about its reaction to the incident? Is the industry of today better equipped to respond to such a high-profile incident than the industry of 10 years ago? Could we have done better back then? Will we do better if it happens again? The Didcot investigation will be concluded at some point. We already know that regardless of the failings, it will be too little, too late for the four men and for their families and friends. But the bigger question is this: was there anything more that we as individuals, companies, and organisations could have done over the course of the past 10 years? Honestly, truthfully, did we do enough? Let's have a look. What we're going over in the chat. You are the only one pushing this through the media. And is it? Yeah, yes, I am. Yes, I am, and I will continue to do so. But is it enough? Listen, the investigation's still going on. Have I brought about any kind of change? No. I mean, I'm probably off the Christmas card list of Thames Valley Police Health and Safety Executive, and quite possibly a few others as well. But it's not. I've not made any difference. Another week older and wiser and more informative information, thanks to Mr. Anthony. Thank you very much indeed, Dan. But yeah, I do remember. You go out of my house, up the road and do a left. You're heading towards North Cheam. It's a little collection of shops. Not much there, but. And I drove up that way, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 days after my mum died. And I was sat at the traffic lights thinking, I can't believe that life is still going on. Do people not know? Well, clearly they don't know. But it was like, are you not aware that the most important person in my life is no longer here? How dare you go about your daily work? How dare you go about your shopping and your trips to McDonald's and so on down the line? Now imagine the families of the 4 guys killed at Didcot. Obviously, they got the phone call to say something tragic had happened. There was some initial thought that maybe they'd been, underground and maybe they'd survived. Maybe they weren't on site. Maybe they'd popped down the local CAF and that was why they weren't accounted for. But, ultimately it became clear that they had been killed tragically. Took nearly 7 months to get them out, or 3 of the 4 of them out. At the time, I think the nation, the industry, certainly parts of the media, the construction demolition industry media it was kind of the only story in town. It was the only thing anyone talked about. And I've gradually, much like, as I say, with my mum, that for a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, it was all anybody in my family talked about, but it gradually went away. How does that leave those 4 families feeling now? Do you think they have a particularly warm feeling towards the demolition industry? Do they look at us and think they've just forgotten us? Not that it would have made any difference, but I do think we as an industry, both in demolition and construction, I think we have a duty of care to those working within our industry. But surely we also have a duty of care, a moral duty of care, to make sure that the families of those that are killed in action are also cared for. And as I say, I mean, I said it in the spiel there. I'm not talking specifically about sending them money, although I'm sure that would have come in very handy at times. I'm talking about, the equivalent of putting your arm around those people. And while I was writing that, and it did occur to me, I wonder what the feeling is within Coleman and Company now and over the past 10 years. As I say, every time I ever talk about Didcot, I'd like nothing more than to see Coleman and Company exonerated of all responsibility. I'd love somebody to come back and say, no, there was a fault in the design or whatever it might be. That's why it came down, and it's just a tragic event. And Coleman and Company did everything they could. I'd love to hear that. But regardless of the way that turns out, how many of the UK's demolition contractors, how many of the demolition contractors from around the world have checked in to see how Mark Coleman and his team are doing, how they're coping, from an emotional standpoint. Have they done that? Because they will be grieving too. I mean, I was at an Institute of Demolition Engineers event a couple of years ago, and we were talking about accident reporting and various other bits and pieces. And one of the guys from Coleman and Company got to his feet and was basically, he could tell you how many days, how many years, weeks, months, days, hours ago the DIDCA happened. It was kind of etched onto his brain. And I remember thinking at the time, it's clearly had a deep and painful effect on that guy. But I haven't picked the phone up to make sure he's okay. We talk a lot about mental health in these shows. I would imagine if you are, I'm going to say responsible, and I mean responsible for the people. I'm not talking about responsible for the accident. But if you are, if you were the site supervisor, if you were the project manager, if you were a director at Coleman and Company, you would have been responsible for the well-being of those guys. And they died on your watch. Now, whether it's their fault or not doesn't actually matter. That would have had an absolutely devastating effect on those guys, to know that tragedy unraveled on their watch. Have we as an industry bothered to reach out to those guys, make sure they're okay, check in on them? Have we done likewise with the people that were there on the day? No, I'm not talking about the directors and managers. I'm talking about the guys that were there, who may have. My understanding is, for a couple of hours they were, literally trying to work through fallen steel with their bare hands, trying to recover their guys, their fallen comrades. I'd like to think they received some initial counselling, but what about now? That's a thing you never forget. You never will forget. Are they okay? Did we do enough to make sure they're okay? Are we doing enough now? Gary Muirhead says, life is so precious, treat every day like it's your last. Tell your family how much you love them, how much they mean to you. Yeah, I know Dan started to say that as we were closing shows out. And it seemed, first time he did it, it seemed a little bit kind of, in the nicest possible way, it seemed a bit trite. I mean, I know I always end every show with, look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Because this show started at the height of COVID, that was what we were all thinking, I think, at the time, making sure that everybody around you was okay. And the first time Dan said, give your family a hug, tell them you love them, you think, yeah, a bit naff, isn't it? It's not though, is it? Think about those four guys. Did they get a chance to do that before they went to work that day? I mean, some of them were working away, so it wasn't the fact that they left home and left their families. But did they get the chance to do that? Did their families get to say the right thing to their loved ones before they perished? I mean, I won't bore you with this, but I've told you this story before, and I'm so glad I did it. And thankfully, I think my wife learned from it. My mum was in hospital at the height of COVID, so we could only visit her, one person at a time. So my sister would do a day, my dad would do a day, and then I'd do a day. And on one day that my sister was at the hospital, I got a couple of hours with my dad completely alone. And it gave me an opportunity to just tell him everything that I probably should have told him on a daily basis. How much I loved him, how much I appreciated the sacrifices he'd made for me, for my sister, for my mum. And I cried, and he called me a soft tart because that was my dad's way of dealing with emotions. But I got the chance to do that. My better half had exactly the same. Her dad was in hospital for a good few weeks. She had the same opportunity. So when when he died and when my dad subsequently died, it was like, well, at least I've had a chance to get that off my chest, to tell them how much they mean or meant. Did the families that did do that? Did the guys that die have the opportunity to tell their wives, spouses, girlfriends, daughters, sons, nieces, nephews? Did they get a chance to do that? Nobody thinks of the after effects of such accidents and for everyone involved in this. How are they now? Yeah. I mean, I know we touched on this a little while ago. And I know I was doing like a fictional story, and I have got another one coming up, completely different subject. Do that for you on Monday. But I think there is that it's like, I mean, that was why I started the story talking about my own personal experience. You know, we had literally hundreds of phone calls, text messages, Facebook messages, condolence cards, sympathy cards, all of those things. My mum's funeral, there was 100+ people there, you know, all tearful and all, sharing recollections of what she'd been like as a kid, what she'd been like as an adult, various stories like that. And then once it was over and done with, with me, we had the wake, we said goodbye to people, and that literally was it. That was it. We'd literally not heard a word from 99% of them since. And I wonder about that from a demolition and construction perspective. If somebody is killed on site by an accident or possibly even by their own hand, those that have witnessed that's going to live with them. It's going to live with them almost certainly for the rest of their lives. And I know some companies are very good at putting in place counselling and mental support, emotional support, and that kind of thing initially. But how long does that last? If you've seen somebody die, being crushed under debris, or an excavator has clumped them while it was slewing, or whatever the tragedy is, that image, that mental image, and that feeling will never go away. And yet, counselling may well go away after a couple of days, a couple of sessions, a couple of weeks, even a couple of months. And like I say, has anybody checked in with the other guys that were on site that day to make sure they're okay this year? Has anyone picked the phone up to Mark Coleman and said, "How you doing, Mark? You all right?" And the crazy thing is, within this industry, there is a great deal of camaraderie. I'm awfully critical of the NFTC at times, but there is a camaraderie. There is an opportunity for the industry to get together, break bread, and they'll have their Christmas do's and they'll have their regional events and stuff like that. And I'm certainly back when I was doing them, Mark Coleman was a fairly consistent presence at them. I wonder how people treat that, and I'm saying this because I know what I'm like. I'm the worst possible person to involve in anything related to grief. I would rather drop somebody entirely, at least temporarily, than have to face grief. I mean, I have many, many, many character faults. That's one of my biggest. If one of my mates loses a parent or whatever, and I get to hear about it, I'll kind of do my best to avoid them for a good few months, because I'm not equipped. And I know there's a lot of people like that. I wonder how the workers, the managers, the directors, the company principals at Coleman and Company were treated by their peers in the industry. I really do wonder about that. Andy Salter says, grief can take 18 to 24 months to emerge. Trauma stays long after that, as the brain is wired to keep you safe and therefore stores the emotion to be triggered, but sometimes mundane daily triggers. There's some other comments, and I will get to those in a moment, but I will tell you this. I was very, very close to my maternal grandfather, who was also called Fred. That's why my son Fred is called Fred. You know, I think some people assume that he was named after Freddie Mercury. He wasn't. He was named after my granddad. Very close to him. In fact, the first year I was at work, I was on a youth opportunity scheme, but I was at work, a 5-minute walk from his front door. So I used to go to work, and rather than taking packed lunch or whatever it might be, sandwiches, I used to finish work finish for lunch at 12:30, walk to his house, have lunch with him, and then walk back to work. So, we were regularly in contact. My granddad died when I was about 15 years old. And I went to see him at the hospital when it was clear that he wasn't coming home again. And I was fine. I was absolutely fine. I went to his funeral and I was absolutely fine. No problem at all. I reckon it was maybe 6 months later, just sat there watching the TV with my girlfriend at the time, now wife. And she went, "You all right?" Tears streaming down my face. No idea. He just popped into my head and that was it. That's how grief works. Let's have a look. Dan says you should go to the unveiling. No camera would mean a lot, I think. I'm going to keep an eye on it. I was reacting in the moment, Dan. Thank you for that. I was reacting in the moment when we had it was it Gail was on the show a couple of days ago, and I did think at the time, when I've been back and I've been back completely alone. I mean, I've been back to Didcot probably 4 or 5 times over the years, completely alone, just on the anniversary, just to sort of pay my respects and stuff. And I think maybe that's the way to do it. When that unveiling is going to be taking place, I might just go and tuck myself in a corner somewhere and keep my head down and just to do that thing. And again, is there going to be a wider industry representation? Not that it will mean anything, but is there? Is the IDE, the NFDC, going to send along a delegation to pay their respects? Dan says nobody thinks of the after effects of accidents and for everyone involved. I think I've done that one. I still think on my dad. One thing I regret: never got to see him before he passed away. I was here working, got the call when I was at work. Yeah. I mean, as I say, I mean, I had that conversation with my dad, and then we had an opportunity to go on holiday, and I actually said to my dad, he was ill, and he had cancer and he had COPD, so he wasn't long for this world. And I actually said, I'm thinking about going on a holiday, but not keen on leaving you behind. And he swore a lot and said, "No, you go." And I'd been there 2 days before he died. Thankfully, my eldest son Ollie was with him when he passed, and it was Ollie that phoned me to tell me. But yeah, I mean, I still have a regret. I mean, I couldn't have prevented it. It's not like I could have done anything, and I'd already had the conversation. But I do, to this day, 2-3 years on, do still think, kind of wish I'd been there. Gary says I only go to the funeral to see if there's steak pie afterwards. Not a bad judge, I have to say. And listen, I hope she's watching because I'd like her to know this. My eldest daughter. All of my kids were at my mum's funeral, but my eldest daughter in particular, we had like a buffet laid on, and one of the items on the buffet was carrot cake, and my daughter had a bit of carrot cake, and she said, "That's the best carrot cake I've ever eaten. In fact, I'm going to have another bit," and she did. Oh, and the wake bit went on for several hours afterwards. At the end of it, Guy said, "Right, okay, we're going to clear away the food, but we've still got half this carrot cake. Would anyone like to take it with them?" And we all looked at my eldest daughter and went, "Oh, you should take that." While we were saying goodbye, she ate the lot. She ate half a cake. Well done, Georgia. Very true, Andy. It was a year to his passing. It hits me hard. Yeah. The weird thing is, and I am in some ways a bit of an emotional robot, I think. Weird things upset me. Movies, three-legged dogs, stuff. Weird things upset me. But by and large, I'm not tough. I mean, I'm not tough at all. But I've still not cried over my mum, my dad. I've just not. That's just not how I'm wired. And I'm that bad that my sister came here on the 3rd anniversary of my dad dying, and she knew it was the 3rd anniversary, and I'd forgotten. I'm that far removed from it. And yet there are things that I will say, things that I will do, things that will occur to me, things that come on the TV, things that I encounter. And my first reaction is, oh, must tell me mum or must tell my dad. And can't do that anymore. Still catches me to this day. Going on 4 years later. Still catches me now. So did we do enough in the grand scheme of things? Did we do enough? I don't feel like we did. And one of the other things we talked about COVID and the fact that the politicians of the time had no playbook. I'd like to think that we have a playbook now. I'm not convinced we do, but I'd like to think that we have a playbook for that. But do we as an industry, and I'm talking about demolition and construction combined, do we have a playbook in how best to respond to a tragedy like Didcot or like Redcar? I've not seen that being built. And I guess if I was still advising the NFDC, I guess I would be advising them to put something defensive in place. We are aware that one of our member companies has suffered an incident, and we are working with them to get to the bottom of the cause, and we'll report back, and we may instigate additional training or refresher training, and so on. But very defensive. It's like, well, we're putting up the shutters. There's shit going on, but we're putting up the shutters. But I do wonder if part of our response in the future, part of our responsibility in the future, should be more human. Yes, this is now in the lap of Thames Valley Police or whoever, or the health and safety executive. While that's going on, are we dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's in supporting the families, the co-workers, the directors even of the company involved? Because I don't know if we are. I beg to wonder the grief the families and colleagues are going through on each anniversary. Yeah, I mean, we are 100 odd days away from the 10th anniversary, and it is. I'll do something. I'll broadcast something on the day. I mean, I've kind of run out of things to say. I do feel very much like I'm rehashing the same old sentiments and the same old phrases but I mean, that's basically all I've got. I can't alter the course of the investigation in any way, shape, or form. I can keep it in the spotlight. That's all I can do. But imagine those families. This is going to be our first Christmas as a family without my father-in-law. My father-in-law's birthday was the 23rd of December, and my father-in-law had a really, really, really troubled upbringing, abandoned with his brother as a child. In fact, his brother kept him alive by stealing bread and milk. He was literally a toddler, and his brother, who was a couple of years older, was stealing bread and milk to keep him alive. They were put into foster care, adopted, and then ultimately they reunited with the family and stuff. So he was very scarred I think is probably the word by all of that. To the point where, you know, I mean, I'd probably only known the guy for a few months, and I remember him saying about the fact that, you know, when he was a kid, he got a present, and it was his birthday present and his Christmas present. Now, you know, I mean, I'm sure times were hard. He was born, you know, just after the war had ended, and I'm sure there wasn't a huge amount of money sloshing around, but it was almost like that was a continuation of how he'd been treated by his family and by life in general. Birthday, Christmas, it's all the same. Here's a, you know, here's a whatever, here's a toy. So in his later years, I mean, certainly when I met him, and I met him when I was 19 years old, so 41 years ago. As a family, we always made a point of we would do something for his birthday and we would do something for Christmas. Now, sometimes it was a case of we'd take him out for a meal or something on his birthday, and then we'd buy him a present at Christmas, but we'd always buy him a birthday present and a Christmas present. He always got a birthday card and a Christmas card. There was always a separation to remind him, you know, we are aware that you have both. You're not just a one-trick pony. We always did that. This year will be the first year we don't have that. So the 23rd of December is going to be doubly difficult, I think, for my other half, for a mum who is still with us. And then Christmas, you know, we'll all be together. The entire family will be together. And, you know, one of our traditions, we always had my in-laws for Christmas Day. And this will be the first day he's not going to be there. And, you know, we'd play silly games after lunch and various other bits and pieces, all of which were kind of either driven by or revolved around him. And this year there's going to be a gap, you know, a physical gap at the table, but there's also going to be a physical gap in, we were at this point on a Christmas Day, we would have been doing this. Do we still do it? Do we abandon it? Do we do it in his honor? I don't know. Andy Thornton says, it's good to cry, but we're all different and have loss in our own way. I only have to watch James Blunt singing Monsters and I'm gone. That's one of my triggers. Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor. And I know it's not her song. I know it's a Prince song, but her version of it. There's a line in it. All the flowers that you planted in the backyard all died when you went away. I can say it. You know, I know the meaning to it. I can say it, not a problem at all. I can hear Prince sing it. He wrote it, he sang it. I can hear it, not a problem at all. Sinead O'Connor sings that line. Oh, man alive. Yeah, that's like an immediate kick to the tear ducts, that is. Yeah, isn't that a great lyric? All the flowers that you planted in the backyard all died when you went away. God, I miss Prince. I missed Sinead O'Connor as well. Yes, Mark, keep doing the traditional things in his honor. I think that seems to be the popular vote within the house, and that seems to be the way we're headed. But even then, you know, we will do it in his honor. But as I say, there's a couple of games. I mean, there's one game, I can't actually remember what it's called. It'll come to me. But there's one game that he used to bring every year to our house, and you know, we'd get to about 4:00 in the afternoon, and he'd break out the game, and we'd all sit down and play it. I'm sure that game will still come, but the reason it came, and you know, the driver of it, the person that taught us all the rules, that caught my son cheating every single year, that person's gone. I'll leave it there. That'll do us for today. That'll do us for the week. I'll be back on Monday. I have written a thing. More cheery than that. I'll tell you more about it on Monday, but I was thinking last night, I didn't have much to do. I was thinking last night about all the various threads of things in this industry. For example, we have competence cards in which we have no real confidence. We have the need for more skilled workers, but we're not really attracting them. We have the advent of AI and telematics and remote monitoring and various other bits and pieces. And I started to kind of formulate this story about all of that coming together. So you get your competence card, which basically we've decided at some point in the future, all that does is allow you on site. But from the point that you get on site, you are overseen by an AI monitoring system, telematics, remote monitoring in the cab. And it monitors everything. It monitors your use of fuel, the amount of, excuse me, the amount of wear and stress you're putting on the machine. It monitors incidents. It monitors your eye movement, both for signs of fatigue or possible presence of drugs or alcohol. And I sat down and I put all that together, and it was like, "Ooh, I have a thing there. I'll do that for you on Monday." I haven't even got a title for it yet. Andy says, "I'm sorry for your loss." Thank you very much indeed, Andy. Yeah, as I say, I've been without father-in-law now for, well, he died in February. So 9 months. There you are. I think, do you know what? Even if anybody else comments, I'm going to end it on this. Dan has just commented again, but I'm going to leave that. You can read it. As I say, have a fantastic weekend. Stay safe. Look after yourself, your colleagues, and give your loved ones a hug and say you love them. Dan, that's exactly what I want to do. Everybody, do that. I'll see you Monday. Till then, have a great weekend. All the best.